I'm Adam Jennings, and this is Awaiting Approval, the Season 1 Debrief. Awaiting Approval is a podcast about the messy human side of creative leadership. Today's episode is a little different though. Instead of another conversation with one of our brilliant guests, I wanted to take pause and look back, to debrief, to reflect on what's happened since this show launched just a few short months ago. And honestly, it's been quite the ride.
You're disappointed with the failure, but you have to stand up and have the confidence to say, I need to redo this.
What is the sake of fully automated world if we don't have this universal basic needs as a society, as humans, to thrive?
But then I have to be humble and I have to step away and go, does this work for you? If it doesn't, great. Let's find out where we messed up.
I don't need to be a subject matter expert. You'll tell me when I'm doing it wrong. I'm here to plumb your minds to figure out how to do that.
In order to move somebody, you have to let yourself be moved. You have to receive the emotional piece, and you have to be healthy emotionally about your creations.
Just enjoy for the fun of it. We stuck a 21-foot condom on the Cernabis giant.
Hold on to that creativity. You're never going to lose it. It's going to go through different transformations. It's going to shift. You're going to flex it and expand it in different ways.
It's a great tool to understand, if you haven't felt imposter syndrome in a while, are you pushing yourself hard enough?
So for you, custard is perfection. For my former team member, custard is the Antichrist.
The thing that always makes me proud is when you leave some sort of legacy, you leave something better than you found it.
Sometimes our work isn't the work, it is actually the people. Some of my best projects, I think, are projects where people have discovered what they're capable of.
What actually changes the world is people. It's not the tech that changes the world.
The UX of today is needed for the AI of tomorrow. Those people and those skills are the exact people and the exact skills that companies should be tapping into and leveraging for the future of AI in their company and their business.
Part 1. The numbers tell a story. We went live on June the 12th, 2025, with zero ad spend, zero PR, and just me, my partner, a microphone, and a vision. Since then, this podcast has charted in 12 countries across Apple Podcasts, from the UK and US to Australia, Ireland, Germany, Spain, Canada, Hong Kong, Denmark, the Czech Republic, and most recently Pakistan, where we reached number 8 in the arts design subcategory and number 42 in the arts main category. In the UK and the US, we've consistently been in the top 20 in arts design. In Denmark, we broke into the top 10, as we did in Belgium and in the Czech Republic. And in Hong Kong, we hit number 4 in the arts design subcategory. All of this means that Awaiting Approval is now a top 10 globally charting podcast in its category. Downloads, we're well over 6,000 for season 1. For a brand new show built organically, that's a number I'm incredibly proud of. But here's the bit I love even more: listener commitment. On Apple and Spotify, listen-through rates are regularly in the high 80s and 90s. That means people aren't just pressing play, they're staying with these conversations right to the end. Part 2. What listeners are saying. I've been bowled over by the feedback for this show. People have described it as a very special thing, as raw and honest, as a space where people feel seen as a leader. One listener told me it was the only podcast they'd found that takes the armor off creative leadership. Other amazing real review quotes include, "I think this may be one of the best discussions on creativity and the world we're living in that I've heard in quite some time. If the other episodes are half as good as this, you've got something to be really proud of. What a wonderfully delightful episode. Such a great way to start my weekend. Thank you. Wonderful series so far. Appreciate all the hard work that's gone into putting this together. A great niche for a podcast added to my listening list. A powerhouse season of guests. And no filters, no perfect answers, just real people who care deeply about the craft and the impact it makes. And this is exactly what I hoped for. Not polish, not PR sound bites, but something human. Part 3, Favorite Moments. That humanity came from my guests, all 13 of them across 13 episodes, each bringing something unique. Let's revisit a few highlights. In episode 1, Kevin Frank reflects on what he wishes he could go back to and tell his younger self. It's a moment that captures the shift from chasing awards to realizing what truly matters in creative leadership.
I would say focus on the relationships as much as you focus on the work, maybe more. So I would go back, I would go back to agency side, Kevin, where I was all about just doing the best work I could. Sometimes doing that work was at the expense of coworkers' feelings, if I'm being honest. Sometimes it was at the expense of client relationships, although early on I wasn't really building client relationships like I did as on a senior level. I was just like, well, if I do great work, I'm going to be okay. And there is truth to that. And a lot of people go really far just doing great work, but what I've come to learn over the last several years is that the most important thing is relationships. Like the way you get to great work or the way you can get to great work without relationships, but I think you can get to even better work with relationships. So that's what I would tell young Kevin. I would say, invest the time in the relationships and treat people the way that you expect to be treated. That's gonna help you do even more of the work that you aspire to do.
In episode 2, Charmaine Weiland reflects on one of her biggest leadership lessons, the balance between loyalty to your team and openness to new management. It's raw, human, and something many creative leaders will recognize.
I was fiercely loyal to my team and defended them to the hilt and wanted to make sure that they were taken care of, but almost to the point where I wasn't really taking on board what new management wanted to do. And that hurt me definitely, but also kind of hurt my team. So knowing now, it's like I would have probably been a little bit more open, tried to build those relationships up a little bit better. And I know I'm not the only one who's fallen into that trap of like, there's new ownership and you're like, why can't it just be like it was? Why are you changing things? It's like, well, management's going to do what management's going to do. So you either get on board or you leave. So I think that's the one thing I would probably take back, because there was a lot that was good with the company. It wouldn't have been the same if I'd stayed, but it could have been better than, it could have been better if I'd handled it better, if you put it that way.
In episode 3, Stan Heimgen reflects on how the creative industry's focus on short-term goals can strip designers of their passion, and why making space for experimentation is essential if we want to reignite that fire.
I know so many creative people, especially right now, many designers who lost this fire of designing something. And many of them lost it because they are constrained completely, right? So the business tells them, look, we need to grow our audience every month. Those are hardcore KPIs. There's no room for experimentation. You need to deliver stuff. And it's not that it's not important. Like then we have to do it. And going back to the business constraint, like if you operate in a business environment, you have to reach certain goals. You have to move the business forward. Of course, that's the job. But I think if there's no room for being creative and trying out new things, then a lot of creative people getting frustrated, and then they lose this fire, they lose this passion, and then they're probably either, they might leave this job and try to look for something else. I think that's why a lot of people go freelance, because they want to be much more selective and picky about how they use their time. And they want to be creative. They want to create meaningful things. And I think if you lose that feeling, then everybody's loses. Like the employer company loses this too, because they hired you to come up with new creative products and new creative solutions. And now it's not that creative anymore. And it's not that new anymore. And it's kind of like doing the same thing again and again. So which doesn't set them apart, doesn't differentiate them from other companies. It doesn't move the business goals forward because everyone is doing the same. So everyone could benefit from experimenting and creating this culture of trying things out and broadening your horizons much, much more.
In episode 4, Laura Baker reflects on the shift from doing the work to leading the work, and how hard it can be to find your sense of value when you're no longer creating the output yourself.
it's not just the fact that you're not doing the work, it's this really large value shift, a mindset shift that has to change, because as a leadership role compared to an IC role, where your value comes from is like almost a 180. You're not delivering something necessarily. You don't find value in the work that you're delivering. There's suddenly a, what the hell am I doing? Like, I remember being like, I've just sat in meetings all day. I haven't done anything. I haven't delivered anything. And it really took me a long time to get comfortable with how I reframed the value that I was creating. And I sort of battled with myself over that until I kind of realized, oh, well, I've just sat in meetings all day, but that is my work. This is the means in which I do my work, is through a meeting. And so it took me a really long time to get comfortable with that. And so I think if I could go back, it's all hindsight, right? Like, would I actually change anything? No, because I think you have to go through, call it a difficult time or struggle, and to really learn. And I think if you didn't go through that, you'd lose what you have today in a lot of these like tricky situations. Because actually you get a lot of growth from them. So I wouldn't necessarily change it, but I think I'd try and go back and just try and give myself a bit of encouragement to say, don't worry, keep going. You'll kind of figure this out, and don't be so hard on yourself, type thing.
In episode 5, Dave Zabosky shares the deeper truth that underpins all creative collaboration, and why the most powerful work always includes care alongside power and transaction.
Recently, I've been shared with this idea from this philosopher, Forrest Landry, and we were talking about this a little bit before, is that an empowered collaboration has 3 parts to it. It has power, transaction, and care. So any empowered collaboration, whether it's a knitting circle or it's a global corporation, you have to have these 3 pillars, and they have to stand with each other. One cannot be weaker than the other, and that is power, transaction, and care. And we're in this time right now where power and transaction are really well understood. Power seems to have taken the lead on things, and care certainly has been diminished. But in order for a collaboration to be fully alive, to be as successful as it possibly can, for a collaboration to live its best life, you have to have all 3 of these in balance. And I don't mean equal all the time, but they have to be considered of each other. They pull on each other. They create a stool. And so power, we have charged that word. But if you neutralize that word, power just means your hierarchy, your experience, your skill set. It's where you are in the trajectory of your own life. Transaction is the interplay of powers. How do you interact with the other powers that you are collaborating with to create whatever it is that you say you're turning into a thing? And then there's care. And care is every bit as sophisticated, as complex, as important as power and transaction. And we know what care feels like. People ask me, well, what do you mean by care? And I say, yes. Like, you know what care means. You know what to care for. You know how to use care. There are practices that we have in the art world for caring. And when you think about these 3 pillars, power without care is abuse, right? Like, it's pretty clear that it's really easy for power without care to be abuse. Transaction without care can be manipulation. Like, I don't care if you get out of this, whatever you get out of this, I'm going to win, right? It's a zero-sum game. But power with care, well, that's mentorship. And it can be amazing, right? Like, power with care. My candle can light your candle. I know that when I teach something, I learn more, and it makes me better. So power with care is empowered mentorship. Transaction with care is generous collaboration. And so when we add that care to things, it offers the thing that we're creating to have its highest possible trajectory. And that we've forgotten that hurts my heart. I see it all the time in the tech world, and we're seeing it in our administration in this country right now in the United States, that care is lost. Um, sure, they say they care about certain things, but clearly it is not in balance with power and transaction. So that's kind of my sort of view of how I approach a collaborative process.
In episode 6, Rashmi Lopez opens up about the long shadow of perfectionism and how learning to embrace messiness became essential to building both creative confidence and inner trust.
I took all of the people in the company, which was like, 10 people, and most of them were engineers, and put them in a room together, including the leadership there. And they all went through this beautiful process of really discovering and identifying what exactly their purpose was, how that translated into their vision, their mission, their company values, how they operated, all the way up to their positioning statements. How are we going to position these products? And it really led me into a really beautiful visual identity for them. Still kind of working out the kinks now, but just being in the room with them as they found their aha moment, I think was a very proud moment for me.
In episode 7, Bill Sneebold shares a moment of deep personal honesty, exploring how success in design leadership sometimes comes at the cost of losing touch with your own creative voice.
I look back on some periods where I felt really embarrassed looking back at them, but there were learning times. I remember working on a website. I poured my heart into it and thinking this is perfect, exactly what it needs to be. And it went to the client, and we had a meeting, and I got defensive about it when they didn't love it as much as I did. And I'm thinking, but this is perfect. What is wrong with you? And my boss, after the call, pulled me aside and said, what is your purpose towards this project? He wanted me to answer the question, right? Rather than just tell me, you're supposed to listen to the client. He knew that if he just asked me, that I'd go, yeah, I'm here to serve the client's needs. I'm not here to serve my interpretation of what the client should want, right? And no matter how much it's good that I'm pouring my passion and everything into it, and I'm coming up with something that I think is a really good solution. But then I have to be humble and I have to step away and go, does this work for you? If it doesn't, great. Let's find out where we messed up, or where the gap is here.
In episode 8, Jane Cook reflects on the quiet power of listening and why creating space for others to speak has become her most essential leadership tool.
I absolutely love patterns and I love design systems and operational side of it. But I do think you're going to need some strategic, thinking and mindset and planning to be efficient. Otherwise, you'll just have a bunch of people just sitting around and playing with the tools, but where's it going to go? So yeah, there's trying not to get too in the weeds of it because we still don't know yet. But my gut feeling, and I think that's something that we've been afraid to say, like, oh, I have a feeling on this, and it starts with emotion. I think we're going to be less afraid to say, but that's okay, right? Because isn't that the 20% is those tiny details? It's those feelings that you just can't cork. So yeah, more pairings, I think, smaller teams, using tools, but having guidance, right? Having, experience to guide that, I think is super important. Otherwise we'll flounder. And I also think there is a role there to shape and help, we use the word business, but organizations, whatever we want to call them, to see that you can't just do away with something. Can't do away with just juniors. You can't do away with just leadership. You have to balance. Otherwise, we'll just have short-term gains. I don't see any big changes we're going to make if we carry on like that.
In episode 9, Kevin Parry shares the quiet but powerful mindset shift that helped him let go of comparison and pressure and finally feel confident with what success means to him.
I lean more within the actual work. I think clarity is a huge part of it. If something isn't clear and it's confusing, to me, it's not successful. That's step one. I think the second part of it would be evoking some kind of emotional response. So for my stuff, it's a sense of wonder. Can I get people to, what What did I just see? How's that happening? Is that real? How's that editing? And then I think my definition of success for kind of more personal, I guess, I've transitioned from when I was younger, I was like, oh, you need to make money and all that kind of stuff, fame and fortune or whatever. And as I've gotten older and become a dad, I think it's just simply taking care of your family. If you can pay the bills, then fantastic.
Is there a freedom that comes with that sort of maturation from I have to have all the money and the big house and the big car and into I just need to provide and get through and do a good job?
Yeah, I think 100% there's a freedom that comes with that because the first instinct of fame and fortune is just more and more and more, and you can never, you're reaching a height that just keeps getting higher and higher versus just, simply having enough and being content. So I think there's definitely a piece to that.
In episode 10, Lou Maxon speaks about the power of storytelling in design and how the best work always starts with asking better questions.
I sort of migrated from editorial storytelling design over to branded content and then into the deep dark hole that is advertising, but really came out the other side, into the world of like brand storytelling, which I'd argue that I've been doing since the beginning. And to this day, like that's what I spend, a majority of my time doing is solving these problems for brands or solving these challenges for brands. And, I get hired. It's funny. I get hired by agencies. I get hired by startups. I get hired by in-house brands. And I've worked in all those different environments. So I think the important thing is you sort of know when you're in-house what the empathy to the in-house team is. They always feel like the agency gets the juicy work. So having worked on both sides of that, you can, to your point, like you can be a better leader because you've been subjected to some of those scenarios and you can kind of help a team navigate through. And my sense is I don't really care if it's an agency or if it's an in-house or it's a startup, right? You have to set the creative bar, you have to establish the culture, and then you have to be a champion for the work.
Episode 11 saw Dr. Chris Arnold challenge the notion of fitting in, arguing that true innovation comes not from blending in, but from having the courage to stand apart.
The thing about advertising is that there was a period when creativity was on its own. There was no competition for creativity. It was the thing that made you stand out. Through the heyday of Saatchi, it was like the big idea, the amazing creative. Nothing else can compete. Now we're competing with data. Now we're competing with a lot of other things. So clients think, I don't need creativity. I've got data. I don't need creativity. I've got AI. I don't need creativity. And so they don't think they need it, but they really do, because that's what makes you stand out.
In episode 11, Jason Giles shares the pivotal moment that changed how he viewed leadership, not as a set of tasks, but as the impact you have on others. It's a moving story of seeing someone you've mentored step into their power and the realization that followed.
So I kind of snuck up next to the door and I peek around the corner, and here was this designer and this PM up at a whiteboard, just duking it out, just arguing around like approach for this certain problem that they were trying to do. And I'm telling you, like my heart just filled up. I was like, oh, I was so proud of him. But then also it dawned on me, I'm like, oh, that's the point of leadership. That's what people management can unlock. And that was a pivotal point that changed everything. And I realized that with people, the investment that you make, sometimes the payoff isn't for months and months later. And as I reflect back to our VP, Rajesh, now I realize why he wanted me to just see it through long enough so I could start seeing some of the returns on that.
And in episode 13, Roger Rahatke offers a powerful reminder that leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about creating space for others to bring their best.
The qualities that I want to represent today on how to give good feedback and how to put my arm on somebody's, around somebody's, virtual shoulder and say, hey, listen, it's okay. Let's do this. And we're going to, why, I don't know why, this is what it's supposed to be, but here's what it could be, right? Or whatever. And I haven't always done that well. As a matter of fact, I've failed at that many times, in my career of giving good feedback and doing it in a way that uplifts, but also is clear, right? And brings change and at the same time brings excitement for when it is something that is perfect, or close to that. But the other side is receiving that feedback. And, there were times when, of course, fight or flight, right? I wanted to run when I got the wrong feedback, or I wanted to, kind of prove why it was the right thing or whatever. And I did those things. I tried and I did. And sometimes I was successful in that, but it never felt right. Right. And being able to, and again, I don't know if I've done this right all the time, or a lot of the times, but being able to take that feedback and know you can learn from it and know you can do something with it, and realizing it's not about you, but it's about this, and that this can change and you can take it to that next level and you can get pushed to do more or take it to a higher place, is something that we have to lean into. So again, what you do with feedback and how you receive it and the way you give feedback are really the marks of how mature you are as a leader or in your craft, I believe, going forward. But it doesn't change either way who you are internally and inside. And so you have to overcome the things that give you those external responses, and why you do that by believing that you're already approved inside.
Part 4. 1 word per episode. Storytelling is powerful because it makes us feel. And as a creative, everything that we do is designed to elicit an emotional response. The best stories don't just inform, they stir something in us. So I thought I'd try something simple and fun. What if I captured each episode in just 1 word, a single emotive word that describes the essence of that conversation? Here's my list. Episode 1, Kevin Frank, Grace. Episode 2, Charmaine Weiland, Analytical. 3, Stan Heimgen, Purpose. 4, Laura Baker, Resilience. 5, Dave Zabosky, Heart. 6, Rashmi Lopez, Determined. 7, Bill Sneebold, Inquisitive. 8, Jane Cook, Love. 9, Kevin Parry, Playful. 10, Lou Maxon, Reflective. 11, Dr. Chris Arnold, Inclusive. 12, Jason Giles, Guidance. 13, Roger Rahatke, Visionary. Once I'd done this very human task, I thought it would be really interesting to feed the transcripts of each show into AI and ask it to summarize each episode with a single emotive word. Here's the AI-generated list. 1, Kevin Frank, Relational. 2, Charmaine Weiland, Adaptive. 3, Stan Heimgen, Vulnerable. 4, Laura Baker, Process. 5, Dave Zabosky, Transformative. 6, Rashmi Lopez, Courage. 7, Bill Sneebold, Culture. 8, Jane Cook, Empathetic. 9, Kevin Parry, Craft. 10, Lou Maxon, Introspective. 11, Dr. Chris Arnold, Provocative. 12, Jason Giles, Inclusive. 13, Roger Rahatke, Human-Centered. 2 very different lenses, fascinating to compare, and I think I will strongly go with my human-created list. Part 5, Themes across the season. My goal for this podcast, right from the beginning, has been that each episode feels like you are sat in a coffee shop or wherever we're recording with myself and my guest. You're sat right there listening to the conversation. And as you listen to their story, you follow their arc, their career journey, and you learn from that. You learn the similarities with your own story, your own arc, and you learn the differences, the choices they made that helped shoot them through their career or held them back. And as you listen to the entire season of all the different design leaders from different creative disciplines, you begin to understand the similarities from creative discipline to creative discipline, and also the differences. And maybe, as part of that bigger season journey, it helps unlock something in you. When you stitch these conversations together from the whole season, some themes keep showing up. That leadership isn't about control, it's about trust. That creativity and vulnerability are inseparable. That the best leaders don't stand in the spotlight, they hold it up for others. And that in a world changing as fast as ours, the human side of leadership matters more than ever. But here are my questions for you. What themes came up for you as you listened? And what themes would you like explored more in Season 2? Part 6. What now? So what's next? Well, Season 2 is already shaping up. More voices, more stories, more messy human truths about leadership. Awaiting approval is growing, and with that growth comes an opportunity. I'm now actively looking for sponsors for Season 2. I want to find a brand that believes in creativity, leadership, and thoughtful conversation. You might be a product tool, a leadership community, or a forward-thinking tech startup that wants to connect with an engaged international audience of creative professionals. If you or someone you know might be a good fit, let's talk. You'll be supporting a show that's already charted in more than 10 countries, racked up thousands of downloads, and built a loyal, thoughtful audience of designers, leaders, and makers with a strong skew towards decision makers. To start a conversation about sponsoring Season 2, drop me a message and let's have a chat. And for everybody else, I'd love your help too. Please share the show, leave a rating and a review on the podcast platform of your choice. It really helps other people to discover the show. Also, tell me who you'd like to hear from in the next season. And remember, if your company is looking to sponsor a globally charting top 10 design leadership podcast, my inbox is open. Awaiting Approval is a Cordial Fox production, hosted by me, Adam Jennings, and produced by me and Jasmine Egner. And what's left for me to do in this debrief is to say a huge thank you to my guests, Kevin Frank, Charmaine Weiland, Stan Reimgen, Laura Baker, Dave Zaboski, Rashmi Lopez, Bill Sneebold, Jane Cook, Kevin Parry, Lou Maxon, Dr. Chris Arnold, Jason Giles, and Roger Rohatke. Without your input, this show would not have been so successful. Thank you all. And thank you to everybody who has tuned in, listened, shared, rated, reviewed, sent feedback. It means so much to me that you've enjoyed this season, that you have gained insight from it, and that it has resonated with you. And a very special thank you to my partner, Jasmine Egner. Without her insight, guidance, and patience, this show would not be anywhere near what it is right now. Thank you all for making Season 1 something so very special indeed.